じゃあ今日はですね、基調講演。
Hello everyone. As a keynote lecture, we have invited Professor Kate Raworth. Actually, last year, we invited Roman son, but Kate and Roman are actually married couple. They are now trying to transform the world together. As you know, Kate has proposed Doughnut economics. And in terms of the environment, we need to think about the ecological ceilings. And in terms of our life, we also need to consider the basic human needs and social foundations. And between those boundaries, we need to think about how we can coexist together. And she's now promoting this idea in different cities in Europe. So in that sense, she's actually a future designer. So she's going to give us a wonderful talk on that point. So Kate, could you start your talk?
Thank you. A huge pleasure to be with you here today, and a very, very big honor for me to be giving this keynote as part of the Future Design Conference. I have learned about future design nearly 5 years ago, and it's been in my mind all the time because I believe that Doughnut economics and future design are a beautiful pair of ideas that will work together so well in so many places. So it's a real pleasure to be with you today. I'm going to introduce the concepts of Doughnut economics, and I hope it will become clear to you all quite quickly how well this fits with the approach of future design. So let me start by pulling us back from the present. Let's think about how the whole of the 21st century has begun. It's begun with repeated crises, from the financial meltdown of 2008. We live in an era of climate and ecological breakdown. And we have all just lived through 2 years of COVID lockdown. And these crises are reported differently in the news, but they are deeply connected. They show us how connected we are with each other and with the rest of the living world. They hit people's lives with deep inequalities, inequalities of gender and race, of wealth and power, inequalities between the global north and the global south. And they all arise from systems we have created that are based upon endless expansion. When the financial system aims to increasingly expand, it will create a bubble and burst. When we endlessly increase our use of Earth's fossil fuels and resources, we induce a breakdown of the living systems of the world. And when we endlessly expand human settlements into areas of wildlife, coupled with ever-increasing airplane flights between countries, we create perfect conditions for a global health pandemic. So endless expansion is not the shape of progress. And we need to reimagine what progress and well-being looks like in the 21st century. And this is where I offer you a donut. This is the only donut that turns out to be good for us. Think of it as a compass for our collective prosperity. The goal here is to leave nobody in the hole in the middle. That is where people are falling short on the essentials of life. That's where people do not have the food, water, healthcare, housing, energy, equality that every person has a claim to in life. These 12 social dimensions come from the Sustainable Development Goals that all governments in the world have agreed to. So leave nobody in the hole. But, and this is a big but, don't overshoot the outer limits of the planet. We must not put so much pressure on our planetary home as we use Earth's resources to meet our needs, that we push beyond this ecological ceiling. These are the 9 planetary boundaries first recognized by scientists just a decade ago. They are the life-supporting systems of our planetary home. To have a stable climate, healthy oceans, fertile soils, a protective ozone layer overhead, abundant biodiversity. We must protect the systems that make life work on Earth. So the goal here is to leave no one in the hole, but don't overshoot the limits. We want to live in the green ring itself, which is the safe and just space for humanity. If that is the shape of progress, it's not endless expansion. It's thriving in dynamic balance. And as I do it with my hands, it's like a heartbeat. What we know is health in the human body connects us to understanding health in the planetary body. If dynamic balance is the healthy place, right now we are very far from that, as all of the red in this picture shows. Millions or billions of people worldwide cannot meet their most essential needs. That's all of the red in the middle of the picture. We need to get rid of the red. But at the same time, we have already overshot multiple planetary boundaries. Climate change, land use, fertilizer, and biodiversity loss. So we need to come into the donut from both sides at the same time in every country in the world. And this is an unprecedented challenge. I sincerely believe that our children and their children will look back to this image and ask us, the people of the 2020s, what did you do once that you saw this? Once that you knew about this challenge, what did you do? How did you change? Surely you did change. And what will we tell them? This is the story we must turn around, and we need all of the tools and imagination and possibilities that we can find to turn this story around. And I think future design is one of the most effective tools and promising ways to enable us to help turn this story around. From the point of view of donut economics, all of the red in this picture shows us that the world is deeply divided and unequal. Millions of people are falling short on their essentials. Others live with huge wealth and are overshooting planetary boundaries. So we need to transform the dynamics of the global economy, globally and nationally and locally. And we believe we need to make economies that are regenerative by design and distributive by design. Let me tell you about both of these. We have inherited economies that are degenerative by design. We take Earth's materials, make them into things we want, use it for a while, often only once, like plastic, and then we throw it away. And this take, make, use, lose is pushing us over planetary boundaries. It's running down the life support systems of our planetary home. We must transform this dynamic into a circular or cyclical regenerative economy so that we work with and within the cycles of the living world. In this economy, resources are not used up. They are used again and again and again, far more carefully, more collectively, more creatively, and more slowly. And because we have already damaged the living world. We must restore her systems. We must repair and renew. Here are some examples from cities that are beginning to put the ideas of regenerative design into practice. In Amsterdam, they have committed to becoming a circular economy, including in construction. So in this district of the city, every building that is constructed must be designed and built with materials that have been used and can be reused. The materials have a passport to show where they've come from and where they can go. In the city of Oslo, it is a car-free city centre. There are no cars. So they have removed fossil fuels from transport because a circular economy must be driven with renewable energy. In Kunli in China, they are returning nature to the city, recognizing that they are vulnerable to flooding. So they have created a stormwater park. People call it a sponge city, so that when the floods come, the city can absorb it without getting damaged. And cities like Vancouver creating an urban forest, bringing trees and nature back into the heart of their city. These are just 4 examples of bringing regenerative design back to our cities. I'm sure there are many already in practice in Japan, and there are many more we can still do. At the same time as moving from degenerative to regenerative, we must also recognize that we have inherited economies that often are divisive by design. They tend to capture opportunity and value in the hands of a few. Did you know that over the past decade, the number of billionaires in the world has more than doubled, from around 1,000 billionaires to more than 2,000 billionaires? We see the rise of a global 1%. This will never bring us into the donut. We need distributive design so that value and opportunity are shared far more collectively with all who co-create them. Here are some examples, again, from cities that are beginning to create distributed design. Back to Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, the bicycle is king. It comes first in terms of transport. The tram is second, and the car is definitely third. So by putting the bicycle first, it means the most affordable and accessible form of transport is available to everybody. It's safe. Children bike to school. It means you have an open distributed transport network at the heart of the city. In the city of Milan, they are beginning to build social housing that is also low carbon. So it's regenerative and distributive, making it affordable and for everybody to live in the center of the city in housing that actually helps to restore the planet. Solar panels are being installed on rooftops of buildings worldwide, but who owns that power to generate electricity? In some places, it's owned by large multinational corporations. So the value is taken away from that place. Edinburgh is one of many cities that is making sure that the value stays. The solar panels are owned by local cooperatives created by the community so that they have the capacity to generate renewable energy, and the money is reinvested locally. Lastly, in Cleveland, Ohio, they are using what's called anchor institutions. Institutions like hospitals, schools, city hall, universities that have the power to purchase in ways that distribute value into the community. University Hospital in Ohio realized that almost nobody from the nearby neighborhood, a low-income neighborhood, nobody from there was working in the hospital. So they created a program help people from that local community to get a job. Women who were returning from maternity leave and needed that help to get back into work. People who didn't quite have the qualifications, but could be assisted to get them. So they shared the opportunity of employment in their hospital with their nearby neighborhood. These are just 4 examples of distributive design, sharing value and opportunity far more equitably with all. I'm sure there are many in practice where you are. We can enrich our thinking by bringing more and more examples. So, regenerative and distributive design. How can we get into the donut? And I invite you now, wherever you are, to imagine and ask yourself, how can the city I live in live within the donut? What would it mean to ask that question? I'm going to explain now a tool that we have been creating recently, which we are soon going to release. And I hope that it will be combined with the work of future design, because I think it would be very exciting to see them working together. So we can unroll the donut, open it up, and dive inside and envision a future we want, and use this space as a canvas for imagining new possibilities. So let's go inside that canvas. This is the space for creating a city donut or a town. And here's the question we ask. How can our city become a home to thriving people in a thriving place, while respecting the well-being of all people and the health of the whole planet? That is a complex question, and we can break it down into 4 parts, these 4 squares you see on the screen. We can divide it into the local aspirations for our city and our global responsibilities that connect us with the world. So first we ask, how can all the people of our city thrive? And how can our city be as generous as the wildland next door? These are the local aspirations. Put them together with, how can our city respect the health of the whole planet? And how can our city respect the well-being of all people? I'm going to take us into each one of these 4 lenses now. So how can all the people of our city thrive? What does it mean to thrive where you are? That can only be answered by the people of your place, according to your values, your traditions, your culture. What does thriving mean for us? What has COVID-19 made visible where you live? Inequalities that were always there, but now can be seen and must be acted upon. And which aspect of your culture will turn out to be your greatest strength? When we know we must transform towards the future, what are the deepest values that we can use to pivot towards the future we want to create? So these are the entry points into exploring this local social lens. Then we can ask, how can our city be as generous as the wildland next door? If I was with you in your city now, and I said, take me to the wildland next door, take me to the healthiest natural habitat of this place, where would you take me? Where would you show me? Because if we can go to the wildland next door, where nature is performing as herself, we can see that nature is incredibly generous. Wherever she is on planet Earth, she has learned in that place to store carbon, how to welcome wildlife, how to cycle the water, to harvest energy, and to make us feel at home. What if we aimed to make our cities as generous as nature's wildland next door? So we can ask ourselves, how can we store more carbon here? How can we welcome more wildlife here? How can we use the city spaces to harvest energy, whether it's with rooftop farms or solar panels? How can we manage water here? This will make us resilient to climate change if we learn to mimic nature's own resilience. So these are the local aspirations of a place. Now let's go to the global impact. We know that every city is connected to the whole planet through the products we buy, through the food, clothes, electronics, household products, construction materials. We are connected to the whole planet through supply chains. All the material that is brought into our cities and the waste that is exported out. How can we reduce our impact on the planet? Because every high-income country like Japan, like the United Kingdom, like the United States and all of Europe, we are overshooting our pressure on planetary boundaries and we must come back within. So how can we do that? How can we create a circular economy where we live? How can we transform our food systems, for example? How can we decarbonize mobility? Every place needs to make major transformations to reduce our carbon emissions and our material footprint on the world. And then lastly, still thinking of the global supply chains. Think of the people who grow the food, stitch the clothes, assemble the mobile phones. What are the working conditions like for them? How can we respect their rights? So we can ask ourselves, which companies are based in our city? And what is their business model? What is their impact on people's lives worldwide? Which brands and retailers are selling their products in our city, in shopping malls? And how are they employing people around the world? Because the labor behind the labels is often not so beautiful as the brand on the box. What can we do to ensure that the way we live respects the rights of other people who support those lifestyles? So let me pull out, and I've just talked us through all four lenses. When we put them together, we have a canvas. You can put it up on the wall. And now we've got a space for imagining, a space for creating, for recognizing what's already going well and what we need to transform. And we can put a topic that we want to discuss at the center, for example, our city's future of housing. And then we can ask ourselves, how can we create housing here that builds community, that is affordable to people? How can we create housing here that welcomes nature, that stores carbon, that brings back the living world? How can we create housing here that is circular by design, uses far fewer materials, housing that harvests solar energy so that it reduces our pressure on the planet and respects the rights of the people who made the materials, who construct the houses? As you can see, this canvas does not tell you any answers. The answers will be yours. What it invites us to do is ask a holistic question, looking at it from many angles and making many interconnections between them. We first created this tool in 2019, before anybody had heard of COVID-19. And we ran our first workshops in Portland, in Philadelphia, in Amsterdam. The people you see here are city officials and city residents discussing their own city portrait and how they want to transform the way they're living. They all were very clear that it was so powerful to be looking at everything together, connected, so that they got a holistic view of the transformation that needed to be brought about. I'll give you just 3 examples of how different cities and places have been using this framework. The city of Amsterdam created its own city portrait and then adopted the concept of the donut at the heart of their circular economy strategy. So they drew an Amsterdam donut in orange, and they gave themselves this goal to be a thriving, inclusive, regenerative city for all residents while respecting the planetary boundaries. That's the goal. They adopted a plan to become a circular economy with ambitious targets on a European standard. I recognize that in Japan already there's very high level of metal recycling. So you are actually far ahead of many, many other countries in terms of knowing how to create that circularity. But this is just beginning in Europe. And Amsterdam is one of the cities leading. They are trialing circularity in social housing, in textiles, in construction, and in food. When Amsterdam adopted the donut in April 2020, it created inspiration in many other cities that then decided to use the donut in their own way. The city of Nanaimo in Canada also adopted it. They drew their own version of the donut, and they now use it as a tool for assessing different possible policies. So for the future of local transport, they created 3 scenarios and then used their local donut to compare the advantages and disadvantages of each one. So they're using it as a holistic planning tool. And then the last example I'll share is from a neighborhood, not a city or a town, but just a neighborhood, a few streets in the city of Birmingham in the UK, where Civic Square are opening up community level conversations, street by street, neighbor by neighbor, inviting everybody to be part of the conversation. How can we live well here while respecting the whole planet? Involving children, making it playful. To me, this is a beautiful example of making the transformation of our economies accessible to everybody to be part of that conversation. So let me pull back. This is the picture that we must transform. This is what I believe the future will judge us for. Will we turn this story around or not? If we're going to turn it around, we have to transform the dynamics of our economies from degenerative to regenerative in all of the ways that we live, from divisive to distributive in all of the systems that we create. The tool that I have just shared for unrolling the donut is a tool that we're very excited about as a possible way for many places to take and use in their own context to help bring about the transformation that we know we need. And put that together with future design, I think we have something really special as a possibility for the future. So I'm looking forward to the conversation now, to hear your responses, to hear your questions, because I think donut economics and future design beautifully complement each other. And I hope that they are both going to inspire many people to bring about the transformations that the world needs. Lastly, if you're inspired by these ideas, I invite you to visit our platform, doughnuteconomics.org. You can see there the work of change makers from all over the world who have taken the ideas of donut economics and are putting it into practice where they live. Teachers, city councillors, innovative entrepreneurs, communities. There are tools. You are welcome to join the community or just browse the tools and learn from what other people have already started doing. So I'll stop here Thank you very much, and I look forward to this conversation.